There's a televangelist by the name of Rick Wiles. We've talked about him a number of times on the show. I've seen him described as an end times commenter. So he's waiting on the apocalypse because he's such a religious fundamentalist that he's all in with it. So this guy shocked the shit out of me with what appears like a hard turn left.
If somebody in America put together a political movement to do two main things: break up the power of the tech companies. I mean, bust them up. Don't just slap their fingers. Bust them up. Break them up.
Like in the monopolies of the early 1900s.
Yes, I mean, crush the tech companies, break them up, and to outlaw being billionaires. We've reached a point. I mean, I'm a free enterprise person, and I have no ill will towards anybody in their financial success. Hey, you want to be a zillionaire, a quazillionaire? I don't care. All right. You want to go buy a planet? Go buy a planet. I don't care. But when you use your money and power to change my life, to take away my rights, to try to force things on me that I object to, that I find morally repulsive, when you try to restrict my free speech, when you try to promote population control, you want to pump vaccines into my body, when you want to change society, you know what? You're my enemy. You're my enemy. And the only way you're able to do it is because you're a billionaire. So then we need to take away your billions. Bill Gates, if he was working a job, 7 to 5, if he was going to work like everybody else, Bill Gates wouldn't be doing this stuff, would he?
No.
He's only doing this stuff because he's a billionaire. Take his billions away. Take it away. We need to do it in this country. There needs to be a populist movement in this country. Let's break up the tech companies. Let's take the billions. I want to take Bill Gates' billions and give it to the poor. I want to give it to the poor. I want to strip them, completely strip them and give it to the poor. I want Jack Dorsey's money. I want Zuckerberg's money. I want to give it to the poor. I don't want to give it to the government. Oh my gosh, tax them and the government get it? No, give it to the poor. Let's take their money and give it to the poor. Let's bust up their corporations. This country would change overnight. I might run in 2024. I might run on that platform. Take the money from the rich, give it to the poor. That might be my platform in 2024.
It's a giving hood.
Yes. I'm gonna bust up the tech companies. I'm gonna take the money from the billionaires and give it to the poor. I might run in 2024 with that platform.
Wow. Damn, son. Damn. I was not expecting that. Listen, credit where it's due. This is one of the first times I heard right-wing fundamentalist Christians actually sound the tiniest bit like the message that comes out of the New Testament in the Bible. Because the whole idea, just, basically the message is keep it real. Fuck the rich. Camel has a better chance of getting through the eye of the needle than a rich person getting into heaven. And we love the poor. And he was just saying, what if I just took all their money and gave it to the poor? Yeah, I think that would be a Jesus-approved approach. I do. And most of the time, these guys do not sound like this at all. A lot of the right-wing fundamentalists seem to believe a little bit in the prosperity gospel, which is this goofy idea that Jesus is pro-capitalism and wants you to personally get rich, and so therefore low taxes and all that nonsense. Damn Rick Wiles, surprising the shit out of all of us. Now, of course, since he's Rick Wiles, he couldn't get it all right. There were portions there where even I was like, eh. So the one I'm thinking of is, he says, when you use your money and power to change my life, he's talking about billionaires here. Good so far. You take away my rights. Okay, still sort of with you, because you could argue that the way our economy functions, having a business owner and a boss who can sort of control your every move at work, That is kind of tyrannical, and that is sort of taking away your rights. Then he says, and try to force things on me, restrict my free speech when they do population control and try to pump me full of vaccines. Oh, okay, hold on there. Reel it in, son. You lost me just a little bit. I don't know about the whole population control thing. See no evidence to that effect. And the idea of like they're trying to pump you full of vaccines. Everybody should want the COVID vaccine. Okay, I do tend to believe the science on that front. I don't think that the COVID vaccine is a giant like Tuskegee experiment or something. You know what I mean? That's not to say I would in every circumstance trust the government with whatever. No, of course, there's reason to be skeptical. But this is an area where I actually believe the science, and I think the vaccine is good. So that's the part where it's like, whoa. But almost everything else, he casually says, I think we should outlaw billionaires. Damn, son, I know some lefties who don't agree with that. There are some lefties who are like, maybe that's a little bit too far. He says we should break up the big tech companies. I think that's a perfectly reasonable position, although I do think there's an intelligent debate to be had between breaking them up or heavily regulating them and treating them as public utilities. And I actually lean more on the side of heavily regulating them and treating them as public utilities. I'm open to hearing arguments as to why breaking them up would be preferable, but I haven't seen anything conclusive in my mind about why that's the better approach as opposed to just regulating them strictly and treating them as public utilities. And by the way, with my approach, you can actually expand the First Amendment and have free speech on a lot of these giant social media platforms, which is something people on the right say they're in favor of. But listen, that does require government regulation. And I would argue that's the left position that I'm talking about there. He says, I want to take away your billions. And he says we need a populist movement, take the billions, give it to the poor. See, the people he cites, that's where it gets a little sketchy, right? Because Rick Wiles is a well-known anti-Semite. I mean, we've covered the segments where it's not even coded. He just is an anti-Semite, right? Like, and don't take my word for it. Go watch those segments. Believe me, you'll come to the exact same conclusion. But like, so he brings up Jack Dorsey, Bill Gates, and Mark Zuckerberg. And so, yes, I have problems with those people. Of course I have problems with those people. But like, you should throw in the Coke guy, the Adelson guy. Oh, Adelson's dead, and one of the Coke guys is dead. You should throw in some of the right-wing billionaires as well. And that's where it gets a little sketchy, is like, usually when these guys talk about money in politics and corruption and billionaires, it's like they're super narrow in criticizing only ones that are nominally left. Like Tom Steyer is another one that they love to go after because he's a billionaire and he spends a lot of money in politics. And listen, I'm against it as a matter of principle, but I think it's fucked up that when these guys talk about this, it's very, like, he's only bringing up the tech guys. Like, all right, dude, you got to bring up Wall Street guys. You got to bring up Goldman Sachs guys. You got to bring up people from the military-industrial complex. Like, there's more than just problems with the tech industry. I would argue that some of the problems in other industries are even bigger than the ones in the tech industry. So that's a little questionable too, but I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think about what he's proposing here? I don't think he knows enough to really fully explain what he's talking about. So in other words, he's kind of advocating for like a wealth tax. That's one thing he's advocating for. I guess it's 100% tax on all assets above $1 billion. That would be one of the policies he's referring to. And the other one would be UBI. Take that money and give it to the poor. Take that money and give it to the poor. So you fund a UBI system with a 100% wealth tax on all assets above $1 billion. That kind of sounds like a badass policy. I'm not going to lie. That sounds like a really badass policy. Now, he's wrong in that, like, you have to have the government play a role. That's the only way you could tax them and give the money to the poor, is the middleman would have to be the government, because the government is just the extension of us. It's our representatives. So you have to have the government involved. But yeah, you can directly fund a UBI program with a 100% wealth tax on all assets above $1 billion. That's doable. It's workable, for sure. And the other thing is, remember the numbers that we just read recently. There was a study from the RAND Corporation, and they said that from, I believe the year was 1974 until today, the top 1% has stolen almost $50 trillion from the bottom 90%. If you just had the same wealth distribution as you did in the post-World War II period, and you just continued that all the way up until today, the bottom 90% would be $47 trillion wealthier. That's an extra $1,144 per month per person in the bottom 90%. That's how much the top 1% has been robbing you. So we're already way behind. And honestly, the idea of a 100% wealth tax on assets above $1 billion and using that for UBI, kind of like it. That's actually a super badass idea. But having said that, I cannot vote for Rick Wiles because Rick Wiles is insanely fundamentalist to the point where I'm convinced that he's convinced he hears God's voice in his head or some angel's voices in his head or whatever. So, you can't vote for the guy. He's a well-known anti-Semite. Again, don't take my word for it. Go watch it. There's going to be insanely draconian and authoritarian social policies if this guy were to ever get elected. Forget it. Forget separation of church and state. He would piss all over the Constitution in an instant. But, hey, I welcome him waking the fuck up on some economic stuff. That's interesting to see.